All right, make some quick introductions. My name is Jared Laughlin. I'm Managing Director at BAM Advisor Services. I've been with the firm a little over 15 years. My job is not cybersecurity, but I do a lot of speaking on it because we started seeing a few years ago so many clients were becoming victim of this. And we have a lot of materials now that you can use with clients. If you want to do a client event, we've done about 50 client events now on this topic. But today we're going to focus more about what it means for your world as a business, because in my opinion, this is the biggest business risk you have right now. This is worse than any bear market it could possibly be. I'll let Jake introduce himself.
Thanks, Jared. Jake Spector, I'm our compliance manager here. I've been with the firm a little over 5 years. Similar sentiments to Jared, right? I work in compliance, so a lot of regulatory legal work, but cybersecurity is now a part of that. It's on the SEC's radar. It comes up during examinations. So we're going to talk a little bit about throughout the examination, but Jared's going to start with a little bit of an intro.
Yep, so a lot of you know, some of you do. I used to be in sports. I was a sports writer and editor for about 12 years. I got to work at the Sporting News, which is a magazine that's now deceased, unfortunately. It was around for about 130 years. And when I worked at the Sporting News in the early 90s, I sat near a fax machine. And it was a pretty bad fax machine. So I got to know the fax machine repair guy extremely well. We're still friends, actually. In all seriousness. We exchanged Christmas cards, the whole thing. He's a nice guy. His name was Frank. So Frank would be in almost every week because back then you needed to use the fax all the time, right? So Frank comes in one day, and at this time, St. Louis was trying to get an expansion NFL team. And Frank comes in and he says, I've got some bad news. We're not getting an expansion team. I'm like, why would you say that? You know, we've got this committee that's working on it, we're doing all this stuff. He goes, I'll tell you why we're not going to get one. I had to go down to their headquarters today. I got a frantic call. They needed help getting a fax out. And they said the fax machine was not working, their admin was out, the prospective owner was trying to send this fax to the league office. It was a tight deadline of 5 p.m. So Frank runs down there to this office, and the guy has like an 80-page application type thing he's sending in. And he goes, I've sent this thing 30 times, it will not go through. So Frank says, all right, let's take the first step, let's try to get it sent. Frank loads the paper in, he hits send, the paper starts going. He goes, see, every single time I try it, the paper comes back out, it doesn't go to them. So the league office received this 80-page fax 30 times. So despite whatever you've heard about why we didn't get a team, I am convinced that sign of ineptitude was why. And it's a good reminder though, how we interact with technology. We don't have to be experts at it, and we're not going to get into firewalls and complex stuff today, but it is important how we interface with it, because if we don't use it the right way, it can lead to a lot of trouble. So, there's a lot of stats about cybercrime. Most of them are wrong, because this is the most underreported crime in the world, okay? If you have your credit card data stolen, you probably don't call the police, right? Or if your password gets stolen. So all the numbers you've seen are probably wrong. But there's one that I really do like, and that is that cybercrime has now passed up drug trafficking as the most profitable crime in the world, okay? So if you have kids that want to go into a life of crime, this could be a good route. It's profitable, it's not violent, the jail sentences are very low, okay? And I grew up in the 80s, and I used to watch Miami Vice every Friday night. It was a cool show, and my picture of a criminal was somebody like this kid here, right? The guy there. I guess he has a mustache, yeah. South Colombian drug lord, big mansion, Lamborghini, right? Replace that with stuff like this, okay? These could be your new ultra-wealthy criminals, right? I like this last guy here. It seems like a real winner. Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk to you about how do you protect yourself as a business. We'll talk about your personal lives a little bit as well, but Jake will kind of run through the agenda here real quick.
So as Jared said, where are we going in the next 45 to 50 minutes? Jared's going to start by going over really the common trends that we're seeing. So the interesting part about the world we work in, right? We see internal threats, and we see emails and what's going on within the BAM and the advisor services community as well. So we really see a lot what's going on between you all in the room, our custodians. So we're going to actually go through some of those trends that we see. Next, we're going to go over cost of a data breach. When Jared and I were both preparing for this presentation, we sort of aggregating slides together, we had both pulled statistics from the 2019 IBM Cost of a Data Breach report. It's sort of the landmark report that gets published every year. We're going to go through some of those examples to walk through what can increase the cost of a data breach and some strategies to hopefully minimize that cost. Next, from a regulatory risk standpoint, as I previewed earlier, cybersecurity and cybercrime is really on the SEC and FINRA's radar right now. We're going to talk about what's going on in those exams, and again, hopefully provide you some resources to combat that. And then finally, wrap up with really a catch-all of 7 or 8 nice, hopefully tangible resources that anyone in this room, depending on your role as an advisor, ops, compliance, client service, can take and not only make their work life safer, but also their personal data.
So the good news is you don't have to go out and buy a lot of technology to protect yourself. Most of you in your office, I'm sure you have antivirus software, anti-spyware, that kind of stuff. The biggest threat to you right now is what I would call social engineering. Social engineering is where criminals trick you into giving out your information. You're the one that gets it up. So they're not using James Bond-like gadgets to, satellite into your computer. You're literally giving the information to them. Now, I know Gene, but if I went up to Gene in the street and said, Gene, can I have your username and password? What would you say? Absolutely. I actually had a guy said, I did this at an event, at a client event once, and the client blurted it out. I go, why did you do that? He goes, well, you seem like a nice guy. So Gene's not going to give it to me, right? Of course, you're going to say no. But if I called Gene at his office and I said, hey, I'm the new IT guy, Jeff, and let's say there was an IT guy named Jeff that just started, and I said, someone's trying to hack into the system, you've got to help us or they're going to get all our data, he might give it to me because I put him in a totally different position, right? I know he wants to help the company. I've made it a situation where there's no time to think. I put panic into him, and I've got a much better chance of something happening. And that's the method that fraudsters are going to use. They're going to trick you by putting pressure on you and wanting you to act very, very quickly. So we're going to go through some actual examples. Now you can tell the nerds came up with all these names, by the way, because they make no sense. I don't know why it's called phishing, but phishing is when it's done by email. Still the most popular method because you can send one email out to 100,000 people, right? Even if only 1% click on it, and it's much more like 10 to 15, you can have a very profitable day, okay? So these are actual examples I've either received or I've seen. This is a common one. Someone gets an email from Bank of America. We've noticed an issue with your account, okay? They're trying to get you curious and maybe even a little bit some anxiety, and you've got to do some banking that day. They're going to ask you to sign in. You're going to click on that link. You're going to go to a site that looks just like Bank of America, okay? And then you're going to give your credentials out to the fraudster, okay? They don't always use fear. Here's one that I got from a friend of mine here in St. Louis. I have a buddy who's a professor at St. Louis University. He knows I do this talk, and I'm always looking for real-life examples. He goes, I've got a great one for you. I got this email that I'm getting this big raise. It's not real. I go, well, how did you know that was the logo, the SLU logo? Was it incorrect? He goes, no, it's right. But what about the email address? I bet it was that. He goes, no. I knew it wasn't right because I'm a very, very mediocre professor. And there was no way I was getting a 12.5% raise. And that is true. He is mediocre. I would say that previous year. So they try to use excitement though. Hey, you're getting a huge raise, access these documents. Okay? Here's one I received recently in the office. At BAM, we have a system that looks at every single email for any type of a virus to prevent me from clicking on something, okay? So why did I receive this? Well, first of all, it was very good. It got my attention. I have a Southwest Chase card. And again, urgent action required. My card will be discontinued. Nothing should be that urgent in an email. That's always, phrases like that, must act now, urgent in an email, are usually signs that it's not real. But when I started hovering over things, I noticed that some of them weren't even links, or they were taking me to these weird sites. So a link can say anything on it, right? You can see schwab.com and it can take you somewhere else. So one of my pieces of advice I would give to us and clients is don't click on links in email unless you're sure you know who the sender is. If they want you to go to schwab.com, open up another browser and go to schwab.com. Don't do it via the link. So why did I get this email if we have all this protection at BAM? The reason I got the email was there are no viruses on this email. All they're trying to do is to get me to go to a fake website. Okay, so our IT departments, the ones that you guys have in your offices, can do a lot of stuff for us. but they can't do everything, okay? This is a people problem that we have right now. Here's an example of spear phishing. This is where they target an individual. This is the email that John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, received. This is how the DNC got hacked by Russia. Super low tech. He got an email that someone had accessed his Google account from Ukraine, so they actually used cybersecurity against him. Like, hey, we're trying to help you out. If you look at this email, it's pretty legit looking. He clicked on change password, entered in his password, changed it. They went into his real account, changed it to the password he just changed it to, and they just sat in his account for months. He gave it out. Smishing. All right, this is when it's done through text. Now, I've been at BAM for 15 years. I'm not an advisor, neither is Jake, but I think we both know, do not do business with banks that cannot find your account number, right? Not a good bank. Although the hours are pretty wicked, they're open at 3:25 a.m. All right? No one should ever ask for your account number via email or text. That's always a red flag. This one's kind of a weak attempt, I think, but could 10,000 texts go out and could one or two fall for it? Absolutely. Especially you get this in the middle of the night, you're kind of groggy. Bank needs my number. You type it in, and you've given it to the fraudster. This is one I got. I almost fell for this just a week ago. I got this message that I had money going out from Venmo. I'm like, well, I didn't do a withdrawal for $175 to go out. What am I? And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I came this close to clicking on it. If I had, probably would have gone to a fake website. So you have to stop and think. I came this close to falling for that one. And I talk about this all the time. So this can happen to anybody. This is more clever than the one about we misplaced your account number. This is one that someone received that their account has been locked. So again, it sets in panic, right? And it's pretty professional. It's from Wells Fargo. You're going to call this number. That's called vishing. It's done by voice. And I guarantee when I call this number, I'm going to get Jake from Wells Fargo, and Jake's going to say, oh, you misplaced your account's locked. Yes, we can reset it for you. Give me your account number. Your account's now been unlocked. I checked my account. It's unlocked. It was never locked in the first place, though. And now I've given my information out to the fraudsters. So we see this with clients all the time now. Some of the attempts are kind of weak, but some of them are very, very clever. So for your own safety, think about these things as you go along here. Okay, we're going to do a quick exercise. And you probably wonder, what is the Mandela effect? So some of you have heard me talk about this, but hopefully a lot of you have not. Even if you have, I switched up the examples. All of you have a piece of paper. The Mandela effect got named after Nelson Mandela because a researcher went to a conference. She asked 1,000 people what happened to Nelson Mandela. And 75% roughly said they thought he went to jail in South Africa and died there. It's not what happened. He did go to jail. He was eventually released and became president of South Africa. So she named this effect after him, where something we believe is can be factual, in fact is not. Now, if you really want to get deep into this, some people believe that he really did die there, and there's been I'm not making this up, a rip in the space-time continuum, and there's parallel universes. And when that rip happened, that's why we have these little differences in things that we just are convinced that are sure. If you ever want to go Google search, you can read all about it. There are people that absolutely believe that's what happened. So we're going to go through some examples. These are common things you see all the time. So you got a piece of paper. Example number 1, Skechers. Which one is correct? And the difference I'll point out is it's spelled S-K-E-T or S-K-E. Okay? That's the first one. We'll go through these pretty quick. Flintstones. How is it spelled? Is it with a T in the middle, F-L-I-N-T, or F-L-I-N? Everyone has seen this show, right? Which is really just a takeoff from the Honeymooners. Okay? Number 3, Ford. We've all seen Ford. Does the F on Ford have a curly Q or not have a curly Q? 1 or 2? Okay? All right, now we're going to show you 4 famous movie lines. These are movies everyone has either seen or the line is so famous you've heard it. First one from the movie Snow White. Blank mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? Okay, fill in the word for that one. Next one, Forrest Gump. Life blank like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Number 3, if you build it, blank will come. That's from the movie what was that movie?
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams, thank you. And the last one, big movie coming out with him, Tom Hanks is playing him this year, Mr. Rogers. It's a beautiful day in blank neighborhood. Okay? Those are 7 examples. I'm willing to bet no one got them all right, but I'd love to be proven wrong. So everyone stand up. I'm going to show you the answers. As soon as you get one wrong, you have to sit down. All right? First one, Skechers. It was number 2.
And they drop like flies.
She said 1, sit down. Even though a lot of you, all right, we got a lot left. Number 2. Is it 1 or 2? It was number 2. I think when we sing the song, though, we say the Flintstones. It's the Flintstones, okay? We still have a handful left. 4, 1 or 2? I did this at an event recently. 95% said it was number 2. It is not. It is number 1.
I might have gotten everybody.
Wow, we just wiped out the The only thing I can think on this one is, I also, by the way, thought it was number 2, is that you think of Ford as a macho logo, and maybe that little curly Q came across as a little too cutesy. I don't know, but everyone got it wrong. So you guys are done, but we'll go. You guys are not good at this. I know you're better advisors than you are at logos. All right, let's see how many got these right. Magic mirror on the wall. Life what? Nope. If you build it, me. I heard a couple people say he, though, I thought. Last one. No one has ever gotten this one right. My, what else? Your? I thought it was your. This. All right. So what's the point of that activity, right? The point is, I don't believe in that whole space-time continuum, but I do believe that our memories can play tricks on us. And if we cannot recognize things that we see all the time, how are we ever going to recognize fake websites? Because those fake websites will be different. They're never going to be quite exact, but they're going to be close enough. And that's why I would say do not click on links in emails unless you're sure of the sender. Okay, so the biggest risk to your business, I don't know why, by the way, I noticed this when I was Jake did it. For some reason, this guy here is like carbonated or something. I don't know what those bubbles are coming off of him for.
He's got LaCroix from our office. Yeah.
But your biggest risk is unfortunately your best resource, your people. That's the biggest risk to your business right now. Now, you can always have that rogue employee. We're not going to get into that today, right? That does something malicious. That can always happen, but and when you let someone go from your organization, be sure to cancel all of their accounts, their credentials, let your CRL know you need to turn their custodial access off. But the much bigger likelihood is it's going to be a great employee that blows the place up accidentally, because they're going to get tricked and they're loyal to you, they're loyal to the company. And fraudsters have really figured out how we run our businesses. They know that when we talk to clients, we require verbal confirmation. So they're targeting emails that say, I've already gotten the verbal. They know how we speak to clients, they know what we work with on clients, and they're using that to their advantage. And they know we're a service industry. So they're going to try to prey upon our instinct to provide great service to get us to rush to do stuff. These are actual examples that we've received. So real quick, the top targets for this, executives, if you're the head of your company, the reason you're a target is because people know you're the boss, and if they get something that impersonates you, you're most likely to do it. You also have control of information, you have control of decisions. Finance department, anyone who works in finance, could be an entry-level employee, could be your chief financial officer. Major target. Why? They control money. And the last one, this one sometimes surprises people, is human resources. They control the tax forms for your employees. Those are very valuable. So they're a prime target.
And we've seen these also be good examples. Take executives and HR as an example. Those email addresses are all over your website, right? So you likely have your board of directors, your executive team, probably someone from recruitment or HR. Those are all publicly available and very easy to find and very easy to spoof, which again makes them a good target there.
So here's an example. This is a real one. This happened a couple of years ago. And nothing Schwab could do about it, by the way. Schwab did nothing wrong, but somebody spoofed Schwab. They sent these emails out to people, okay? Again, your account is primary concern. They use cybersecurity against them. It's been accessed by an unauthorized party. Click this link to confirm your identity. Someone clicks that link. This is the page they were taken to. Look at the information they're providing. So for an individual investor, that could be bad, right? You're getting access to your account. But think about your employees. Not only do they have access to their account, they may have access to all of your clients' accounts. Okay, so this could be a really bad situation. And you can see, to me, that's pretty clever how they did that. You're not seeing all the typos like you used to either, by the way. They've gotten very good at writing these emails. Here's one we received. Again, they leveraged the CEO. It came from Adam Beerbaum. Email to an advisor. Are you available? I need this wire to go out now. I will forward instructions shortly. Now, fortunately, the advisor knew, one, recognized the address wasn't correct, okay? But also thought it was just a little strange. And we have a policy, just like you guys have it with wires sending for third parties, same internally. Nothing can go out via email. You've got to check. Doesn't matter if it comes from Alex Potts, Adam Beerbaum, does not matter. Cannot take those requests by email. This is a pretty good one. Our accounting department got a phone call about a transaction from Chase Bank. They had the correct details. They knew the date, they knew the transaction. But the person who answered the call, Nick Worth from our finance department, was not comfortable with a couple things and did not give the information out. He contacted one of the client service people for that client, who called the client, and sure enough, it was fake. Okay? So that fraudster must have somehow gotten in that client's email and was able to provide information that was correct, but we were able to figure out it was not him. So we called the client to confirm. It's always better to pick up the phone and call. This happened to an advisor a few years ago in the band community. They got this email. Again, they're preying upon the service aspect. I'm at a cousin's funeral, so it's a bad situation. I'm not available. I have an overdue invoice. I promised to send. So in other words, it's going to look bad if I don't get this done. I need you to do this. Let me use DocuSign. I'm not available because I'm at this funeral. I don't think she's in the room right now. Sandy Kim, I don't know how she picked up on some of this stuff. She said, "Are you sure this is right?" They said yes. Then she checked again. She goes, and here was the invoice they attached. So, pretty professional looking. Sandy said, well, one, she noticed in the email string that one letter had changed on the email at one point. She kind of questioned things like, why are they having you bill out of an unrelated account? Why is the payment going to an individual, not the business? And the firm said, yeah, let me double check. Called the client, sure enough, it was fake. Okay? So you have to be very, very careful. This one's a little sinister. This is one of our Buckingham advisors received this year. I'm going to kill you. Has anyone ever received one of these? Now, it's not real, but that is going to get your attention, right? That's scary, okay? And again, they're hoping you're afraid and you're just going to pay. We're seeing a lot of this now too. They get into clients' emails accounts and they set up new rules. So let's say you have a client you work with, okay? They see you're the advisor, they're watching the back and forth. They change the email, so every time you respond to the end client, it goes to the fraudster instead. We've seen this 2 or 3 times that has happened. The client may think you're not responding, they know what you're talking about, they're kind of just hanging out there, and the client has no idea what's going on. So sometimes when they take over an account, they don't turn it off for you. They let the end client still keep using it because they can gather so much intel. This is a really bad one. We've seen a lot of this lately, or attempts. Real estate scams. So what happens is, let's say you're meeting with the client, they're getting ready to purchase a brand new house, they meet with you about it. The fraudster has hacked their email, they know you're having that meeting, they know the meeting's at 3. 4:30, you met with the client, around a half hour later, you get an email from the client, from their email address saying, oh, real quick, I totally forgot to mention, we're using a different closing company, can you wire the money here instead? Money's gone, there's a fake email, and the life savings. This has happened to multiple people now. Sometimes they'll trick the wire company as well, or the closing company, and get them to do something. So a couple things we've done on our end that we're trying out, and I'll let Jake talk a little bit about it, is fake phishing campaigns. This is something that any of you can do. There's some that charge for this. There's even some free versions. And we have started fake phishing our employees. Not as a punishment, but to educate them and to make sure they really understand the importance of this. So this was a recent one that went out. Cardinals were playing in the NLDS, I guess, NLCS?
Against the Braves, yep.
Oh, those are terrible games too if they went to those two NLCS games. But they're going to get 2 tickets to the game from a corporate partner. You know, there's a couple little hints in there. Fridays and Saturdays should be, it's not possessive at 12:40, 5 o'clock. Fortunately, we didn't have a lot of people click on it. We had a few that did. So then we go to them and say, hey, here's what you did wrong. There's another one we sent. I want to share my calendar. Okay? These are the kinds of things people are getting and falling for, though, in real life. It's good that it's fake, but you want to educate, because again, your people want to do the right thing, but sometimes standing up there and Jake and I talking about it is not as nearly as effective as when they see it and they realize, oh yeah, I should not have done that.
And I'll mention one thing, maybe 2 things on this one. Tammy Williamson is not an employee at our firm, so that should have been hint number 1 that you shouldn't have clicked that. Number 2, and kudos to our IT department, and this is one of the resources I'll mention at the end of this presentation. That external email in the red box there, you can do a similar box and put it on through your Outlook services and put it in emails that you receive from. So we've got it set up anything from an @DanAdvisor and an @Lauren Ward, right? That's not an external threat to our environment. But now any email we get outside of that automatically has that external email. So again, our associates are trained on that to say, if this is an external email, why is someone internally trying to share a calendar with me? So again, enough things that we should hopefully be looking out for.
Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. So I was visiting an office at one point and I saw a bunch of stuff sitting out. Okay, I don't know what it was, but we have heard of firms and companies that have been hacked by literally people taking pictures of tax forms sitting out on people's desks. Not even techie, right? They're not even getting into the database. They're literally just seeing what's left out. So Jake started a clean desk policy for us. And that means that at the end of the day, nothing can be sitting out that has personal, private client information on it. And if there is, there's consequences. We do some random audits. And no one has gotten past step 1. Okay? Again, people want to do the right thing. But sometimes you have to put a little teeth into these policies. I mean, that's an easy one, right? You don't need any technology to implement this. But it has to be from the top down. There's no exceptions. Bad password management. This is a photo I took visiting an office a few years ago. This was taped on someone's desk. Not only are the passwords crappy, but they're visible, all right? We use password management software now. Okta is the one we use. There's tons of other ones out there. I would recommend you implement a policy, and it is for everyone. I've talked to a few firms, it's optional. That does not work. Force your employees to start using this, because if they don't, they start creating weak passwords because they have 50, 60, 70 passwords, right? No one can remember those. I use Dashlane for my personal use. I know one password. I know my password at Dashlane. That's it. I know no other passwords. And I've got really strong passwords now, and I'm not forgetting them. I'm not using the same ones over and over like I used to. So let's talk about the cost of all this.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So I previewed this 2019 IBM report, IBM Security and Panama Institute report. So that's publicly available. We've got it cited at the bottom of these slides here. You can email me for a copy of that. There's a number of different things that are pretty neat about this report. One of the things that we'll talk about throughout this, they actually have a cost calculator on their website. And we'll go through some of these cost amplifiers and alleviators that say, right, did you have an incident response team? Okay, a breach potentially goes down X dollars. Did you use encryption? Okay, a breach goes down even further. So again, you can kind of plug in your current IT infrastructure and figure out within your state, within your country, within your financial industry, it even goes to a specific sector, with figuring out what a potential cost of a data breach could look like. So this is an executive summary to that report. It's a 100-page report, so we thought it'd be helpful just to boil down some of the headlines here. First of which, and again, should be no surprise, lost business is the biggest risk to firms. The number they cite is that right off the bat, you can expect 4% of your clients to leave. And that's just within the first notification of, hey, we had a data breach, your data was exposed. Generally speaking, no matter what industry you're in, 4% of clients typically walk out the door. More down the road in the years to come, but again, 4% right off the bat, which is a scary mark for this group to think about. The life cycle of a data breach, this concept of one, identifying that data breach, and then two, mitigating those factors and trying to solve for that once you've identified it, that time period is now grown as well. It's about a 280-day process. In 2018, it was about 260. So each year continues to go up. Part of this, and I'll speak to this in a little bit, each state has their own data breach notification procedures. Those are particular to each state. So let's say you had a data breach go on in your firm, 20 clients across 20 different states were breached. That procedure is gonna look different in New Jersey than it is in Missouri, than it is in New York. That just takes a lot of time for either you or outside counsel or someone on your team to really go through those procedures and figure out. 3, and this will again be a theme, small businesses are unfortunately disproportionately impacted by a data breach. The example they used in this report, they looked at an organization with 25,000 employees, a huge organization, and then someone with 25 employees. Looking around the room, most of you have at 25 or even smaller than that, Thinking about what a data breach might cost for a very large firm, it's about $6 or $7 million. So again, a firm with that type of infrastructure, 25,000 employees, probably lots of revenue on an ongoing basis, that's a little bit easier for them to pay. When you look at a smaller firm, 15 to 25, they still estimate it costs $2.5 million for that firm to go through that. Much, much more difficult, and again, that's why smaller firms like those of you in the room are automatically off the bat somewhat disadvantaged.
But the scariest stat I've heard is 60% of small businesses, like 250 employees or less, go out of business after data breach. That's scary, 60%. And it's because of the biggest factor is what Jake said, lost business. I think that 4% number is actually low, but then there's also future business. People are not going to want to do business with you if you've had a major incident.
So some factors that could add to that cost of a data breach. Are you working with, was there another third party involved? What's your IT structure look like? Do you have complex systems in place to mitigate these risks and identify them earlier? Some alleviators. I mentioned an incident response team. They cite, and we've got a team, our emergency response team at Buckingham Advan. Having an incident response team alone can save you up almost $1 million when thinking through a data breach, Those across your firm who are at the ready to respond to any type of incident. Having that team, we go through tabletop exercises to think about, what if Dan Anderson, who is our chief financial officer, what if his credentials were spoofed? What would that put us in? What if we had a natural disaster? And we've actually gone through some of this with some of our California offices. Thinking through those scenarios to make sure that team is at the ready to respond to those is very, very important.
So we practice, so Jake actually leads this for us, and that's a critical point. I don't think you want your CEO in charge of your emergency response team. They're too high up there. You want someone, but he is in charge of those meetings. So when we go through our trial runs, you don't speak unless he calls on you, and it's quick, because we're trying to get stuff done. We've got some things we prepared, and it did help us. We've never had a data breach, but when Southern California or the Santa Rosa fires happened, we had an office that we didn't know if it had burned down or not, so we needed to communicate quickly. Without practicing that routine about who's responsible for what, I think we would have spent 2 days trying to figure out what to do. We were done in 20 minutes, and by 10 a.m., our clients, our associates, everyone had been communicated with, and it was going through that routine exercise every few months.
That's exactly right. 2 other cost alleviators I wanted to mention. One is encryption, Is your data going from and to your systems encrypted both at rest and in transit? If it's not, we're happy to chat about that offline, about what that looks like. And then another alleviator is just training, We'll talk about how that's a free resource down the road. When an auditor or a regulator comes in and says, hey, have you done any employee training or any type of automated exercises with your employees to make sure they're aware of these threats? And the answer is no. That's not going to look good for your data breach cost. So breaking this down a little bit further, and I'm not going to go into all of these, but 4 different types of costs breaking these down. Detection and escalation, that's really in the identification phase, right? Going through actual forensic activities. Where did the activity happen? Where was the breach? And what type of data is out there? A crisis management team might not need to be hired, right? You actually might need to bring in a third party to say, how should we even think about going through this, not only from the system side of things, but communicating with local news outlets and making sure our clients are aware of this. We'll talk about notification to clients in a little bit, but oftentimes for large organizations, they'll actually bring in a third party to really manage that crisis. Notification costs are typically the smallest piece of the pie, and we're going to put up a slide that breaks these 4 components down. But, right, having emails, letters, I mentioned state notification procedures. Some of those are all over the board. Sometimes you owe a client a letter. Sometimes you have to copy the attorney general from that state. Again, all of those procedures are different and things you'll have to think through. Most of the cost comes in these last 2, what we consider post-data breach or potential lost business, right? If you have enough clients who did have information breached, you might need to have a help desk, whether that's someone internally, whether you hire someone else to make phone calls and to receive inbound phone calls with questions from clients. Tons and tons of things to think about from a legal and regulatory side of things too. Again, for those SEC registrants in the room, this is on the SEC's radar, so you can probably bet if your firm went through some type of data breach, you're likely going to be examined shortly thereafter as well. But the largest piece to the puzzle, Jared's talked about this already and I'll harp on it as well, is potential lost business. I mentioned that 4% mark off the bat. But moving forward, this report actually shows it's difficult to acquire new business. That aspect of reputational risk, right? When you're going out to a prospect and they say, hey, weren't you the firm that went through that data breach? That's a tough thing to go through with a prospect to say, yeah, we did, but it was just part of our information, or now we've got systems in place. That reputational risk really sticks with you for a long time. I mentioned that puzzle, right? Most of this, in terms of the overall cost, comes in lost business and that post-data breach cost side of things. So why should you all care, right? Why is this important to advisors in the room, to your businesses, and to your clients? We mentioned this, and this is a key theme. Small businesses are big targets here. The reason being, again, going a step further, lots of you in the room work with high net worth individuals. Jared mentioned this, right? We preach client service. We preach timeliness to our clients, that they know that they're going to get a great client experience from you all in the room. Because of that, fraudsters who might be sitting in an email box or pretending to be a client prey on that. They know that you want to move things quickly, and that's why we do trainings to say, hey, we still need to verify a wire, or we still need to get the right controls in place before pushing through a transaction. The costs I went through, the biggest of which being a loss of the client. The human elements of cybersecurity, and this comes up with hopefully proactive training as well. We use the example of a castle, right? We can build our IT infrastructure and our castle walls as high as we can at Buckingham and Van, but all it takes is one employee for that whole castle to eventually fall. And I also add, not only employees are a risk, but end clients. I think it's important to also take these lessons and not teach your clients, but make sure they have resources as well. Some of these risks of a fraudster sitting in a client mailbox or pretending to be a client, right? That's the first line of defense, is actually a client having strong password management, updating their viruses and the software patches they have on their own computers. A lot can be done at that level as well. And then lastly, should be no surprise, huge amounts of growth expected in cybercrime. And thus, right, fraudsters know that there's money to be made. So this threat is in no way going away. I want to talk a little bit about cybersecurity over the years. This really hit the SEC's radar in 2014. It had been, right, sort of a recommended exercise with some of the other legislation they had. Think business continuity planning and some of the systems controls they have. But in 2014, they actually issued their first sweep exam. So they went out to the advisor community and said, what are advisors doing from a cybersecurity, a system, a DR, and how are those firms adapting to the growth in cybercrime? Two other things I'll mention on this, and it's glad to see the SEC putting resources. in actually a cyber crime unit. In 2018, they've got about 300 people dedicated solely to working with the advisors to prevent cybercrime. A lot of their cases so far are actually based on cryptocurrency, and thinking about why that also presents some threats to our advisor community. But again, they have about another 100 cases in the queue moving forward that they're going to be hopefully working on. The other thing I'll mention is these cybersecurity sweep exams. We've actually provided a template in the back. Allison has some of essentially what they're asking on these cybersecurity sweep exams and what the SEC or what a regulator might be asking if you go through a cyber-specific exam. And so it's divided into these 6 areas. For those of you who are familiar with the NIST framework, sort of best in class when we think about cybersecurity, the NIST, this list was built off of the NIST framework. Not that in-depth and kind of built for the advisor community. But again, these are the 6 areas. It's available on the app. We've got the white papers in the back that go through the specific cybersecurity questions that fall into these 6 categories. But I'll throw it out there. Our team right now is actually going through an exercise, our compliance team, of using the list provided of what they're asking for a cyber exam and actually going through a mock SEC cyber exam, thinking about how we reply to these questions. And again, that's going to be part of our annual compliance review next year as well. So some action items to think through. I know most of you in the room have already sort of checked these boxes. You either work with Ascendant or another regulatory consultant that allows you to really push some work on them to help you bolster your cybersecurity area. But conduct some type of risk assessment from a cybersecurity standpoint. Either make that a part of your annual review or outsource that to a third party to conduct. Due diligence on third-party vendors is a big one too. That's a growing threat in our community. So at least be going out to vendors on an annual basis, asking for things like their DR procedures, their privacy notice, what they're doing with your data as well.
And we have a questionnaire you can use for that.
Exactly.
It's available, like 35 questions. No vendor should ever push back about filling that out.
Mm-hmm. And these last 2, and again, we hopefully give you some free resources. I mentioned the incident response planning. If you don't have a formal incident response team and you've got a large enough firm to think through that, either with multiple offices or a large enough staff, think about putting that strategic group together and going through a tabletop exercise. I'm happy to share our exercises in those templates as well. And then cybersecurity training, there's tons of free content online for cybersecurity training. So if you don't have anything, please email me and I'll send you some of our favorites to use. Here's how we think about, again, I think it's just a helpful slide of what goes into our cybersecurity program. I think of it sometimes as a 3-headed monster of compliance, operations, and sort of the client service aspects, right on the front ends of Jared's group, and then our IT and our information security department internally. All of those, and then I'll also add just our culture. I think we hire the right people and we train them well to hopefully identify those threats from a cybersecurity standpoint. But I think these 3 aspects and all is equally important to building that program out. So in closing here, we're going to leave you with a couple resources. Again, we talk about this state of preparing for when, not if. That's a great place to prepare and a great mindset to have when we're thinking about a potential data breach or cyber crime. We do have this professional liability program for all different types of coverage, E&O, D&O. We also have a cybersecurity offering through this. So if you have not seen this, let me know. I'm happy to talk over pricing and what that looks like. The big help here is they can sort of break down those state notification procedures. You'll have a professional team who's well-versed in thinking about, okay, where are your clients at and what do those notification costs and procedures look like. Jared mentioned this earlier. We have these white papers available to think through, okay, your client's email just got hacked. What are the resources we can provide them? What are the questions they're going to be asking? Making sure that they have that support from you and their advisor, or they went through a third-party data breach, or especially around tax filing time, right? Someone filed their taxes for them, what's that look like? So we've built all of these out, and all of these are available online as well. The SEC, FINRA also have their own sort of cybersecurity programs available online. It is a very special month for those of you who do not know. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Program. Anybody in the room know that? Just us compliance? Okay. Yep, thank you, Sal. Yep. So this NICCS group, they've got plenty of white papers and things that you can send to your employees and to your clients that are already ready to go. This is one that we've sent out and used, this concept of own it, secured, and protected as their theme this year, which I think is pretty cool. And then lastly, right, this is another free thing that you should be doing is some type of employee training. We do cybersecurity training initially and include it in our annual training as well. We do internally, and we went over some of those examples, have a phishing mitigation software. There's plenty of resources out there and plenty of programs that can send out automated phishing attempts to your associates. Some of them are also very cost effective. So if you have a smaller firm, you're looking to do it across 10 or 15 users, that cost is very, very low, and we think that that's a very, probably especially moving forward, a very important cost for you to consider to sort of add in from a budgeting standpoint. There's alerts that you can build in. I know in our Salesforce program that we have, our client service team, operations, our advisors, we can put alerts on an account that says, hey, client went through some type of data breach or some type of tax fraud. Make sure you're keeping, again, the highest level of security in mind when working with them. The custodians we work with also have those, right? We can put freezes on the accounts. If we do have any threat of someone being in that account, again, talk to your custodians or talk to your client service team about what solutions are out there. And then lastly, I'll end you with this before Jared has closing comments. Celebrate the success stories. When a client service member catches something, make sure that they know that was a really good job. We post that on our company-wide intranet. When someone identifies a potential phishing email, we post that and celebrate that success. I think that's an important part here. You can really get weighed down with some of the, not only the cost of cybercrime, but how there's so many criminals out there looking for this. So I think it's important to really take a step back and say, where can we do our little part to make sure that we're protecting our clients' information?
Yeah.
So I got the 5-minute warning a couple minutes ago, so I think we've got time for questions. What do you have, Jared?
Yeah. I have nothing. Yeah, I think you closed it well.
Okay. Any questions from the group on what we went over or anything related to all things cybercrime, cybersecurity? Yeah, David?
When we travel, we're often given free access to unsecured Wi-Fi networks.
Mm-hmm.
What are the problems, or what should we?
My problem. So now you use VPN to connect.
Well, I'm talking about personal.
Personal, I would not, if you're going to do anything that involves something you don't want someone to see, I would not use those networks. Starbucks, sometimes I've checked in hotels and I'm like, what's your Wi-Fi password? They go, oh, don't worry, there isn't one.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a good thing, right? So I think you just have to be careful about it. It doesn't mean, I don't mind if they're watching me check the sports scores, but I'm not going to do online banking on an unsecure network.
So don't use them, just be responsible about what you're putting out.
Yeah.
I would agree. I would also say, if your phone allows you to set up a hotspot and do it that way, that's another way to secure it. Now I know you're using data costs to create that hotspot and use it, but for me, it's worth a couple extra bucks a month when I'm traveling to have that security and not think that I'm on a public domain somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, share a war story.
A war story, sure.
I don't know if any of you had this experience. Schwab's print vendors flip-flop client accounts. And we had 33 accounts, not 33 clients. 33 accounts, probably it was about 7 or 8 clients because they had multiple accounts. And the print vendors sent our client information to other Schwab clients, and those clients got our clients' information. So we had to go through the process, everything you just said, contacting clients. It was one of the most stressful things we ever went through. It wasn't our fault, but in a way, we were responsible for cleaning it up. The van team, the client service team, was great interfacing with Schwab. But all the account numbers changed. We didn't have any clients jump off the cliff. We had good relationships with them, but it was a very difficult situation. And it wasn't anything about anything.
Not even a breach, right? But people got someone else's data. So imagine that same stress for all of your clients.
I'm telling you, it was very strong.
One last question, we'll wrap up. Sorry.
Is the VPN a good way to go?
Yes, yeah.
Any particular ones?
I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
very helpful, John.
There's plenty of ones there, whether you have iPhone, Android, or any of those kind of things. All of them, or most of them, you'll see in the App Store, things like that, are very highly reviewed, those kind of things. A lot of times your cell phone provider may offer one as well as part of the security platform, so I take a look there first. And then, I think each month you're gonna see different reviews that come out. So, hey, here's the best one at this point, here's the best one at this point. But I was actually just taking a look while you were going through that. I mean, there's some of the highest rated things out there on the App Store from a VPN standpoint. I mean, I was just looking at one, while you were talking, 30,000 positive, like 5-star reviews on it. So you can tell that they're getting used by quite a few people, because of exactly what you're taking off about.
All right, we'll stick around if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, have a great time tonight. It should be fun, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.